Hey everyone, happy Halloween again. I am Kari the Mortician, and today we are going to be doing spooky cocktails here again in downtown Grand Rapids. I am going to be working with Nate Blury. Now, Nate Blury is a local mixologist, sort of a celebrity on the mixologist circuit, I guess, here in Grand Rapids. You may know him from Fox 17, Mix in the Morning, or Cocktails in Quarantine, and he owns the original tin cups. Check that website out. We are going to be making a cocktail here, and he is going to tell us some really fun, spooky stories to go along with the ingredients in the cocktail. So let's see what Nate has in store for us. Hey everybody, so we are here now behind the bar. It's kind of fun being on this side with Nate, who, as I said, is a local mixologist. Many people have seen him on Cocktails in Quarantine, Fox 17, is it Mix in the Morning?
Yeah, the morning mix. I'm all over. We love to do this stuff. I work with the Grand Rapids Bartenders Guild and Drink GR as well. So.
And he knows, he's like, you have more facts in your brain. Just walking in here, I've learned about 20 different things about the building, alcohol, distilling, and so many things. So we are gonna today be making a cocktail, and Nate is gonna tell us some fun, spooky,
it's Halloween. It's a little dark.
Let's get a little dark.
Absolutely.
So tell us what you're making and go for it.
Yes, so we are at the Knickerbocker, which ironically is the name of a hotel in New York. And this drink we're going to make is called the Waldorf, after another hotel just up the block.
Okay.
This is after the old Waldorf, and so the recipe's changed over the years. The original recipe was equal parts absinthe, sweet vermouth, and whiskey. People nowadays probably don't care for that palate as much, so we've changed it up a little bit for modern times. Now what we often do is we do an absinthe wash to the glass instead of a whole equal part. Absinthe is very fascinating. So normally my bottle of absinthe I actually keep in a tube away from sunlight, because you can see that really pretty green tinge to it is actually held in suspension. And so it will, if it hits the camera lights for too long, it'll fall out of suspension and create what we call a louche. I know. So what was really cool in the era of like the French, during the salon era and those parties, what they would do is they would take the absinthe and they would pour it into a glass, and they would have an absinthe drip. And water would drip over a sugar cube and slowly dissolve. And as it dissolves and as that water would hit, it would come out of suspension, and it looks really pretty and it smells delicious. And when the sugar cube was done, it was time to move to the next table at the French salon. Then you would talk to the different people and talk about politics.
Cool.
I know. And what was crazy, when this started to come in, this was also around the time of the French Revolution. And the reason this whole thing called absinthe came about was because there was a worm that had taken over the grapes. And so yes, the little worm killed all of the grapes, and so French wine wasn't a thing. And then also through the Revolution, you didn't have wine, and the soldiers needed something to drink. So this became really popular. The problem was it became too popular. And once the war was over, they needed to go back to grapes and to wine. And because of that, the grape farmers all got together, and they got one of the farmers, he was a known drunk, and they got him really intoxicated on absinthe, and sadly he went home and he murdered his whole family.
Oh my God.
And so as a result, absinthe made him do it, and so absinthe became illegal because it would make people do crazy things. The soldiers would say that they saw little green fairies dancing around. Now absinthe has wormwood in it, or absinthium. And absinthium is technically hallucinogenic. There's a content in it called doujon, and it is hallucinogenic. In theory, you would have to drink so much absinthe to start to hallucinate. You would have been passed out a long time before.
But people were a little scared of it just because.
Oh, yes, yes. So that history really made it sort of...
Conspiracy.
Yes, oh yes. And so what happened is it was illegal for so long. It was only recently allowed to be back in the United States just a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And it's one of the only alcohols that if a distiller makes it, they have to send each batch to Washington to get measured for its Dijon content to make sure that it falls in the category. So,
Like the state or the...
No, the national, the government, the federal government has to measure
DC.
the big stuff just to make sure you can serve it because of the hallucinogenic properties of the wormwood. So what we've done is we've rinsed this glass with absinthe. So just a little around it. And I thought about this because I saw the video you did with the licorice and the black licorice ice cream for Halloween, and absinthe has that same sort of...
The anise smell.
Oh, absolutely.
The black licorice.
Yes. So for the second part of the cocktail, I am going to take about 3/4 of an ounce of vermouth. That's just a fortified wine. And then 2 ounces of rye whiskey. So originally, like I said, the recipe was equal parts of all 3 of these. And we've sort of adapted that nowadays. People really like a little bit more whiskey, a lot less absinthe, and just a little of that sweet vermouth. I'm gonna add some bitters to it as well. And I'm gonna give this a stir and tell you a little bit about the whiskey, because this is a distillery called St. Liberty, and it's incorporated in Austin, Texas. But what they do is they ship their bourbon after it's been made all across the country, and they bring the bourbon to proof based on the story in that bottle. And this bottle is Birdie's Bear Gulch. And Birdie was a freed slave. She was one of the few single black women to homestead in the state of Montana by herself as a single woman, which meant she walked there, she stuck her claim in her land. And what was crazy is during Prohibition, she started to become a bootlegger, and she stilled on her property, and she was known for her hospitality and all of that. The sad part is, of course, back then you sort of, when you were cleaning, you dry cleaned with gasoline. It was very dangerous to still. You always hear about stills blowing up and things like that. Well, she was dry cleaning with gasoline, she got distracted, and sadly there was a fire, and she was burned in the fire. So this drink has just a ton of dark history to it. This is called the Waldorf. And I thought that would be really fun to share with you and your viewers.
So only a few people died in the making of this drink. Nobody died ever making vermouth?
I don't think so. I mean,
we
who knows?
Found one. I don't even know what I taste more of, but
yeah,
you can smell the anise or the absinthe smell, but
it's just
you don't really
faint.
taste it.
No, it's really faint.
I mean, different than...
Yeah, and the whiskey is going to come out very forward. And then, like I said, there's just a little sweetness from that vermouth as well as the bitters to add that flavor to it.
Not what I would usually ever order, probably if I saw it. But I think just because absinthe is so unique, it is really fun to be able to...
Yeah, and it's got a great story to it. So.
It warms you up when it's cold. So can you go down to any local store to order and get absinthe now?
Yes, nowadays you can get absinthe. There's some local distilleries right here in Michigan that make it, and same with the St. Liberty. You can get that at like different Meyer stores and local independent liquor stores, and people can just ask for it. And so these ingredients are a little bit more common nowadays. And like I said, the cocktail throughout the years of the history of the Waldorf Hotel has changed in the recipes. So I would not try the original.
And I kind of love Birdie.
Oh, she was
kind of sad that she died in a fire.
Yeah, she was a real hardcore lady, and it was really cool in the Wild West during this time period of Prohibition. What I think is amazing, and this is just historical perspective, women were really, frankly, second-class citizens. I mean, just look at it historically. They weren't treated the same as men were. And the women were the ones that stilled and made the quote-unquote hooch back then. It was women's work. It wasn't...
We're very important.
It wasn't the men's work. No, they were building the railroad and cowboying and bank robbing. They weren't making the spirit. And so what happened overnight with Prohibition was also women's suffrage. And so in one fell swoop, women not only got the right to vote and their voice, the thing that they did that everyone took for granted became incredibly valuable. So honestly, at this time period, it was really empowering for women in the Wild West, and people like Bertie Brown. When you think about the idea of a black woman being a landowner and being respected in her region, is just really fascinating and really cool. And that's why we like to celebrate that history, and that's why St. Liberty does these different whiskeys after these pioneer women.
So how many different women are featured?
I think there are currently 3. There is another one called Josephine Duty. She was in Glacier National Park. And then Mary, she was in Colorado. And so they ship out their spirits to those areas and get them proofed. They add water to it to make it consistent across all the batches. And they use the same water sources these women would have used. So not the same recipe, but definitely honoring those women and telling their stories.
Can you get the St. Liberty local,
Yep, absolutely.
local everywhere?
Yep. And if it's not at the store, you can ask for it and they can order it too.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing. This is a fun little death stories to go along with our cocktail here
little
for
spooky.
Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween.
So yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our little off-the-wall wacky video with Kari the Mortician, bringing in Nate the Mixologist. So maybe we'll have to come up with a Thanksgiving Kari the Mortician drink some cocktails and a Christmas.
There you go.
Has
I like
nothing to do with the channel, but cocktails for Kari is kind of fun. So, you know, thanks again to Nate.
Yep.
Check out, as I had talked before, the Original Tin Cup is a company that you have. And then if you're local to Grand Rapids, check out Buck 17 and come down to Knickerbocker.
Absolutely.
And check out all of the spirits and beers and everything they have here to offer. See you guys soon. Bye.
Cheers.